leaking top insider stock trades every day until they stop us. Remember, 90% of insider trades are totally useless. We're only looking for those high signal trades that can help us outperform. We're looking for the unscheduled, ignoring tax sales, dividend reinvestments, private placements, etc. We want them to be abnormal, either weird timing, an insider flipping from buying to selling, or vice versa. And most importantly, a history of success with the insider. If they previously buy the stock before it pops or sell the stock before it drops, that's a huge signal. And then the size and quantity, if multiple insiders are buying, if they're super big or small, or super big buys or sells. And then the price action can be interesting sometimes if they're buying the dip, selling the rip, etc. Let's go take a look at the daily charts. We've kind of flattened out here a little bit in terms of the number of insider purchases. Remember, these are already pre-filtered to remove most of the like super small trades, taxes, stock purchase plans, etc. So we're still probably going to come in, we're still coming in well below the median here in terms of the percent of insider trades that are buys, but not quite as bad as it had been the last few days. We're still quite a bit below where we were in early August here, but sort of flattening out here around just the like 20-ish purchases a day. Too early in the week to really have any other info there, but still slightly bearish from the insiders, I would say, slightly bearish positioning. So let's go take a look now at CEOWatcher.com. As you know, I like to do the longer term insider returns, so we'll do 6-month bullish returns there. We'll look at the most recent filings we can get, go take a look at purchases first, and let's sort by transaction value, and let's go see what we can see. Starting at the top here, we see a couple of insiders at Mineralys Therapeutics buying the stock, about $45 million in purchases, it looks like. So it looks like the stock has already popped a ton. Depending on when these purchases came in, they might have gotten a much nicer price than what we're seeing right now. So let's see, 9.4 they came in, which still, should be in the $30 range, but, of course they got it at a nicer price here at $25.50. It doesn't tell us that this is part of some sort of like purchase agreement or something, but like it clearly had to be because the stock wasn't trading at $25.50. Basically, there's not much for us to do. The stock is way up. I mean, it's good work if you can get it, right? If you can buy the stock a week after the stock was actually ever trading at 25 bucks when it's already up another 50%, I think we'd all take that, but not much for us to do there, unfortunately. Ace of Gold Metal, we've seen Salvo Capital Partners now buying this stock a ton. Look at this, all on the way up. Their purchases were much larger, you'll notice, back here a little earlier when the price was still in the 35s. We're now up to about 40. This has been a great trade that we've announced, numerous times. Kind of fits in with, some inflation concerns and some other things that has had gold really on a tear here over the last year. But, I personally did buy in somewhere around here when we saw this purchasing going on. So it worked out well so far, but they continue to buy. So we'll see how far that can go. Ashley Cordova here at Novacure. Let's see what we have here. The CEO, always like to see the stock with a pretty big dip and then, slowly recovering up about 15% probably since this dip. Which one was this? Back in July. Must have been a post-earnings dip, which you do like to see the insiders buying after the dip. We can see that she sold back here in March. Pretty good timing. The stock went up probably 10-15% or so before then just slowly shrinking off there. Another good sale here by Ashley. So she seems to have, maybe not the best timing down here. Maybe not the best timing on all of these, though over the long term, she's been quite correct, at least on her trades. Let's click into this one a little more because we've got another insider that bought the dip right after, which that's a, great timing there, already up 10% on that trade. Let's see who this was, the CFO. They do some research does say the CFO has the most insight of the insiders. I don't know what I just clicked on there, but I didn't mean to. Let's click on Ashley and see where any previous purchases. So it looks like, we don't really, so we've got a couple of sales, which you'll notice most of these sales are all for taxes actually. The tax sales and stuff, we don't actually count toward the overall returns, which is why you only see her having 2 total trades here with a very, very good returns on those sales. If we look at when were the only 2 non-sales, we have one, or non-tax sales. We have one back in 2021 of August 16th. Take a look at when that was, 2021 August, right around here. Fantastic timing, obviously, as the stock went pretty much straight down afterwards. And then we had another one here at the beginning of 2025 back in here. One of these was a discretionary sale as well. So this is our first ever purchase. First ever, obviously, it's not scheduled in any way. I guess we just triple check here to make sure there's nothing weird going on. So no 10b5-1, just telling us that they purchased it in multiple tranches. They weren't able to purchase it all at one time. Pretty good there. This is definitely an interesting trade. No history from her specifically on previous purchases, which we would like to see, but she has timed her sales very well. So now that we see her buying, I think that's pretty compelling. Advanced Flower Group, Flower Capital Group, we've seen this Tannenbaum guy now buy quite a few times. Yep, just been continuing to purchase the stock around here. A decent track record of buying, at least in the short term, with the stock going up here. This one, obviously, it hasn't been 6 months yet, so this isn't going to count into some of his longer term returns yet, but obviously this purchase won't have gone very well for him. But some good timing back here, great timing here, great timing here, not great timing here, not great timing here. So a little hit or miss. Seeing consistent buying from him is interesting, certainly, but not the most compelling one that we're going to see today. Audio Eye, this one is pretty interesting. We've seen a handful of buyers here now. We saw one about a month ago. Yeah, we saw James Hawkins here. Let's see what he is. Just a director, but we saw him buying the stock 15% ago back here. Just in the last month, he's already up 15%. Also a director, but he has much better returns. Over the short term, not particularly great returns here. However, once you get a little longer, we look at some of these, look at these crazy 6 month and 1 year returns, and we can see time this sale perfectly. Well, almost perfectly, I guess, but nailed that sale timing. And then if we look back further, previous purchases, again, this one back in March of 2023, stock fell from 580 down under 5, down all the way down to 4. So a pretty poor showing there over the next 6 to 9 months or so. But then just such a massive increase in 2024 that really is the reason why the long-term returns work out so well. And they timed this one a little better down there. So maybe not, in the short term, maybe not the most highest signal insider. We also only have 2 previous purchases, so not a ton, but we do have the sale as well, which was very clearly a well-timed sale. So I think this is a pretty high signal insider, combining with the fact that another director just bought the stock too. And I think you have another pretty high signal trade right here. High signal insider purchase for sure. Let's look at a couple more. Anything interesting here? Prairie Operating Company. We've got a director buying the stock. Not much history. Doesn't look very good looking over these previous purchases. Just buying as the stock is falling. Not very interesting. We have seen a few purchases here now at Global Partners, but there's so much buying here that it can be a little hard to kind of suss out any signal. If we just kind of try to group them while we're looking at it, we've got like not a great, maybe an okay long-term buy back here, but good timing down here, okay timing, good timing. Good timing in the middle there, surrounded by a few bad timing. I don't know. It's like, the numbers work out, obviously, when we calculate the returns up here, the numbers work out pretty good, just not the highest hit rates, and it's a lot of cluster buying. So I think it's maybe notable that they've been buying in the last. I think especially if you were bullish oil and gas, I think it'd make it more interesting to come look at a company like this specifically, where there has been insider buying, versus maybe another company where there hasn't been insider buying. That that's probably a good way to think about it. I don't think it's the highest signal by itself, but compared to maybe other insider buying or other oil and gas companies, it could be interesting to look at. Looks like we probably have a first ever purchase here from Frank Box or Damon Box. I don't know which one's the middle name. If we click into, let's just see if anybody else is buying here. So buying the dip here down 15%, 14% in the last 6 months. Looks like it is the director's first ever purchase. Poorly timed purchase back here by a different insider. Not very good insider purchasing. A bunch of history, but I don't know how much there's really to glean from them just buying all of the time. I don't know, first ever purchase, moderately interesting, but just from a director, I don't think it's the highest signal. All right, Mark Manheimer at NetStreet. We've got the CEO, pretty good returns, it looks like. Fantastic buying by him down here when was this? Back in March. Not a particularly good purchase here back in August of 2023. Not a good one at all. A much better one back here in November of 2020 when that stock went on a tear afterwards. So you can see over the short term, not as good of returns, with the stock dying down here after that trade. But over the long term, these trades have worked out well. And then obviously these purchases back in March hasn't been 6 months yet. So they're not going to be included in 6 month or 1 year returns. But it's certainly just going to boost these 6 month returns quite a bit because the stock's already up 20% since then. So you can go take a look to see if anybody else is buying. But I think already off the bat, just this guy buying by himself makes it interesting. He's the CEO. He's got a good track record. It's also his largest purchase ever and the largest, this isn't a purchase, so yeah, the largest purchase ever at the company. Also, those are all bonus points, right? Largest purchase ever, insider, good track record. I think that's certainly interesting. I think not a ton of purchases today. Obviously, we've got another insider here at Advanced Flower Group. We've got now our Flower Capital. We've now got the CEO joining in. So you can see we've now got the CEO plus that Tannenbaum guy up there. Plus actually another one of the Tannenbaums was also purchasing, as you can see here. Robin Tannenbaum also purchased. So now you've got a couple of group insider purchases at Advanced Flower Capital. They've been buying for a few days or a few weeks really now. I think that's interesting. But now we're getting into pretty small numbers here. So in terms of purchases. So again, not a ton of insider purchases, but some of those are fairly interesting. So let's switch over now and go take a look at the sales. And if you remember, the sales actually came down a little bit. We're at one of our lower sales days over the last month, basically. So let's see what we've got here. We got WH Group selling out on Smithfield Foods. Well, not really selling out, but selling. $500 million unscheduled sale is notable. You know, this is a 10% owner. They're kind of harder to read exactly what they're trying to do. I think they've sold the stock 3 times now. So this is their largest sale ever. If we take a look at when they sold previously, the timings were okay, I guess. You know, looks like this stock is not super old. Stock just came out in January of this year, so not much history. Previous timing was okay. 10% owner though, they're such large holders that, you know, who knows what other reasons they might be selling. So I don't know if there's much signal there. Leon Black selling Apollo is certainly notable. $122 million sale. Let's just go see though what this is about. So you can see that if we look down at the remarks, I guess they don't really tell you exactly his relationship with the company, but it looks like they basically sold the shares to their own trust that they then can do whatever they want with, that they still run the trust. So they still have full control over these shares. So I don't know how much signal there is really from that. What else do we have here? Kind of unusual. Again, not a ton of 10b5-1s. So a lot of unscheduled selling is kind of interesting. Another 10% owner selling the stock. I mean, the nice thing about 10% owners is they tend to have more history, though it looks like this one's only sold this stock once before, which worked out in the short term, but not the long term. We should be able to see a little bit of other insiders selling up here. But if we click into them, we can see what other companies they are a part of, basically. So Credit Acceptance Corp, Cimpress, Vapotherm. Their returns, it seems like, are okay. Guess you don't have a chart for Vapotherm. Let's see if we can get one for Credit Acceptance Corp. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Those returns don't look very good either. Let's just see maybe Cimpress. So that one, a much better timed sale there. Their track record doesn't have enough interesting there for us to look into it anymore. American International Group, I'm just going to skip over this. Very unlikely that AIG is an interesting one. Jensen continues selling on his 10b5-1 plan. It's been planned, not particularly unusual. It was notable that he did take a break. Well, I guess maybe not notable, but kind of interesting that he took a little break there and then has now turned back on the selling here. We've got an insider at American Express selling the stock. Looks like an unscheduled sale. Looks like it's the CEO. Stock's up 20% in the last 6 months. This guy's track record, not the greatest, not even good. So in that case, I just don't think that's very interesting. French River, another 10% owner. No history of selling. Looks like their first ever sale. Nothing for us to do with that. CTO at Elastic Corp. Insider selling seems to be okay. Not the greatest win rate it looks like, but the stock's gone down an average of 14% in 3 months, 9% in 6 months. We can kind of see some of these buys are timed okay. You know, we're mostly up at the top. I don't think that this isn't the best track record we've ever seen. Let's go see, maybe we can see if this is like a huge sale or something, then I think that could be interesting, but I don't think it is a particularly big sale. So 21 million, 30 million, 28 million. So yeah, you know, maybe on the larger side, but certainly not his largest sale ever. I mean, all these tall red bars are larger, so certainly not the largest sale ever, not even like abnormally large. So it is kind of interesting because his returns are pretty good, but with a relatively low hit rate, you know, we could probably find a more interesting sale. If you did own Elastic, you know, I think maybe this sale might be one that, you know, might have you go start to look at maybe a different company. There's plenty of other companies in the same industry that you could, you know, maybe switch to, but I don't think there's a ton of signal to be had there. This one, a 10b5-1 plan, which we don't normally look at, but it is notable that the CEO here, so Citron Research had put out a report on Loan Depot, basically a very bullish report, shot the stock way up. Stock's up 80% in the last week just alone, and it's up over 2x in the last month. And guess what? the CEO of Loan Depot appreciated that report because he took the opportunity to massively increase his 10b5-1 selling to go from, average sales of like $1 million all the way up to a $10 million sale. And you can see in the number of shares was mostly selling under 1 million shares at a time. He had one other one that was up in the 2.2 million share range, but mostly selling in the hundreds of thousands of shares at a time. After that report came out and the stock shot up, he took advantage to sell 4.15 million shares. So over 2x larger than the rest. His largest sale ever by quite a bit, which we do have research showing that when an insider is on a 10b5-1 plan and they suddenly decide to massively increase the size of their sales, that is a signal, definitely a bearish signal going forward. And on average, those stocks tend to underperform. So this, just according to the research, this is definitely a bearish signal, but doesn't mean it can't work out necessarily. But I think that's certainly a notable one. Brian Armstrong, very normal 10b5-1 sales size, more 10b5-1 selling. He's got a couple, looks like we have a couple Snowflake here, a couple 10b5-1 sales, which those have been going on for quite a while, I believe. If we take a look here, yeah, there's been quite a bit. These big red bars are Frank Slootman selling, but more insider selling there. Now, Vital Farms, this is an interesting one because this guy sold just a few days ago too. So we've got the executive chairman he had just made a very large 10b5-1 sale of $12 million, which, just looking quickly through this, is like 3 times larger than any of his previous sales, it looks like. And he had made that 10b5-1 sale while the stock is up almost 50% in the last 3 months. So that's already a notable 10b5-1 sale because of the size. But then on top of that, he then makes a non-10b5-1 sale immediately after, just a couple days after here, for $5 million, which is now his second largest sale ever, I believe. If we look quickly, no, it looks like, okay, so it looks like back here there's one other sale that was much bigger, $188 million, that he didn't time well. So these sales here, this was the $12 million 10b5-1 sale, certainly larger than, much larger than the average 10b5-1 sales that he had made on this plan. And then you see another much larger sale that's an unscheduled sale coming immediately after a scheduled sale. Is very unusual. I don't know why he wasn't able to just do it on the same 10b5-1 plan. I don't know if he ran out, if the plan had ended, if he didn't have any more money he was allowed to sell on it. So I think it's certainly notable that he is so desperately wants to get rid of the stock. Maybe it seems like he's willing to make an unscheduled sale immediately after a scheduled sale. Bridge Biopharma, we can look at a couple more here. Director selling. I mean, kind of nailed this sale back here. Didn't quite nail these sales as well. An okay history, not enough for me to look into, I don't think. Let's maybe see if there's anything else interesting in here. Yeah, Dreamfinders Home. I think this will be a good one. Housing has been kind of an interesting stock recently, or an interesting industry recently. So a $3 million sale here by William Bradford Lovett, the 10% owner. Looks like quite a bit of selling recently at Dreamfinders Home that hasn't necessarily been particularly well timed, or I don't even know if it's not well timed. There's just been so much selling, there's nothing for us to really do. So let's go look into him specifically and see if there's anything we can find here. Taking a look at the previous sales, it looks like, I mean, pretty close to the top up here back in 2024, then was selling all through the back half of 2024, which was pretty good timing overall, as the stock then was down quite a bit in 2025. Even took another chunk of selling in the beginning of 2025 back right here, and the stock kind of went down a little more, but now up 30% in the last month, starting to sell again around these prices. Not the highest signal. I mean, his returns are very, very good though, historically, though none of these trades since March will be in any of these returns yet, or at least not in the 6-month returns or longer. So these, depending on how the price ends up, these are probably going to drag down his returns a little bit, but still pretty good track record. Tends to, so especially if we see him continue to sell here, like we did, we saw him selling all through 2024, and then we saw him selling, maybe a little bit of a cluster sale here in February of 2024. This is a pretty large sale, one of his largest, if not his largest. Let's see if he's done any other one other $3 million sale. So one of his largest sales, pretty good track record. Not the most notable selling in my opinion, but I think that is notable as well. So I think that's a good place to leave it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can find all the insider trades at CEOWatcher.com.